Good morning. Today we're going to talk about Solomon's dedication of the temple he's built. And you need to read 1 Kings, lots less reading today. 1 Kings 8, 62 through 66, and 2 Chronicles 7, 1 through 10. So if you're just going to read one of them, read the 2 Chronicles 7, 1 through 10. The other one is 1 Kings 8, 62 through 66. So pause me, do your reading, and I'll be here when you get back. Okay, so yesterday we left off, Solomon had offered this awesome prayer, probably the highlight of his spiritual life, and after the prayer, the fire came down from heaven and consumed all the offerings and sacrifices, and the glory of God filled the temple. So the glory of God filled the temple so much that the priests couldn't even get in to do their work. And all the Israelites that were there knelt with their faces to the ground, and they worshiped, and they gave thanks, and they chanted, "He is good, his love endures forever." So on this this dedication, 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks of a dedication, a little bit more actually. 142,000 animals were sacrificed. And these were in general peace offerings, and the fat was burned. That's a sacrifice to God. That's an aroma of pleasing to God. 10% of the animal went to the Levites. That's because the Levites were the priestly tribe, and they in general just took care of the temple and took care of all the priestly duties, and that was their payment. And maybe they got the hides of the animals, and the rest was to be eaten in the sanctuary, in the temple. So you might think of this as a giant barbecue. Now you might, if you're an animal lover, think 142,000 animals. Well, this is a sacrifice, and if you read a lot about sacrifices in the Torah, these animals that they sacrificed were dear to these families. They weren't wealthy back in that time, and so it was a sacrifice. It was almost like this animal had been raised to offer service to the Lord. And when they sacrificed it, they knew it would feed them, but it would also be pleasing to God. So this was not just, oh, here's 20 head of cattle, let's have a barbecue. This was a real sacrifice. Now, as times went on and Israel got more and more and more wealthy, they were able to have less invested in each one of these animals. But still, 142,000 animals is a lot of animals. So there was some cost to some families, even if a lot of them were from herds. So also, 142,000 animals, even over 14 to 20 days, is a lot of animals. And they didn't just slaughter these things. They took care when they sacrificed these animals. These animals were cleaned, and there was a certain ritual behind the killing of the animals and the way the meat was prepared. So Solomon consecrated a new part of the temple to accommodate this. And you have to understand that Solomon wasn't told by God to build the temple. He was told by David, and David really wasn't. God didn't tell David to build a temple. It was just David's idea, which is a good idea. And God obviously said, great idea, because his glory filled the temple. But so Solomon making changes to the way the tabernacle was handled is sometimes viewed as overstepping his boundaries, and sometimes viewed as okay, because God did not tell him, nope, you can't do this, or no, this temple has to be exactly like the tabernacle. He never said that. So it's kind of one of those things you can have your own opinion about. So the Feast of Dedication of the Altar lasted 7 days, and that was day 2 through 9. On day 1, I guess, was the prayer and the actual dedication. The 10th day was the Day of Atonement, And then the Feast of the Tabernacles, which was a regular feast that they celebrated every year, was day 11 through 22. So they were there for, and by they, I mean the Israelites were there in Jerusalem for a while. And they came from Lebo Hamath, or Lebo Hamath, to the Wadi of Egypt. And this is the northern border of Lebanon down to the eastern border of Egypt. So if you're a map person, you want to pull out your map and look, this is a big, long area. And this is not necessarily the borders of Israel at this time. It could be that these people just came from that far. Or it could have been the borders. Or it could have been what Solomon envisioned the borders being, or the Israelites who recorded this envisioned the borders being. Lots of controversy over this. As you can imagine, the borders of Israel are always controversial. But the people of Israel, one commentator said, had a great big barbecue, had a great time. They were spiritually filled. They were happy, they were enjoying themselves, and they left feeling joyful. We've all heard of these mountaintop experiences. This was definitely one of them for the people of Israel. They were grateful to Solomon, they were grateful to David for all he had done, and they were super grateful to God for being the one true God who was their God. He was going to protect them. So this is one of the highlights of the Israelite kingdom. And that's a lesson for today.